was also my co-founder left the company. I slid over as the CEO, and you go, okay, full stop. What's happening here? And the thing that we just started thinking was, what if all that advice was wrong?
Hey everybody, I'm Blake from Allsmith, and you're watching After the Exit. It's the show where I interview CEOs after they've sold their startup and have them share the lessons that they've learned in blood about business, about relationships, and life. And look, you can learn a couple tips from how they built it, but the real wisdom, the moral of the story, comes at the end, after the exit. This episode is brought to you by Visible.vc. Raise capital, update investors, and engage your team from a single platform. It's also brought to you by Boilerplate.legal. Did you know that the average startup spends $30,000 in their first 2 years on legal costs? You can save 90% of those costs on venture capital approved legal documents using Boilerplate.legal. Today I'm excited to introduce you to my friend Bob Gilbreath, former CEO of Ahalogy. Before Ahalogy, he and some friends founded and sold a digital agency named Bridge Worldwide in 2004. He then spent a year at a local venture capital firm, CincyTech. He was initially an investor and board member of Ahalogy, which was founded by Michael Wohschlaeger, and then joined as a co-founder after a pivot. They raised $1 million in 2013, $3 million Series A in 2014, and a few more rounds in 14 and 15. Around then, the business hit a wall. His co-founder left, and they went from 55 to 30 employees. By pivoting to focus on influencer marketing, they got profitable, were named leader in Forrester Tech report, and started doubling revenue from 2016 to 2018. After hitting $10 million in revenue run rate, they were acquired by Quotient Technology for $50 million. So welcome. I'm really happy to have you. This
Thanks
is really
for having
exciting.
me.
Do you remember when we met?
No idea.
We met when you were at CincyTech.
Okay.
We met, and it was with Cladwell.
Yeah,
we came
yeah.
in, and you were running some process.
So
it was a
now,
research
yeah.
process.
You were with the Cladwell team back then. We did this research product that I created, which was maybe my first startup technically.
Yeah. What was that called?
The minimum viable concept.
Yes.
MVC.
MVC.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. What was the
So-
general idea with the MVC? Is
Well, it was really like, I think it first came from working at CincyTech and seeing a startup that came through that they had invested 200 grand in. They took 2 months, 2 to 3 months to build an integration. It was kind of a video game resale market. And they said, well, if we could just get on this one game website with this market, we could test the product. And spent all that money, to get the partnership, to build the MVP. And within weeks, just saw nobody wanted to buy and sell games.
just $200,000 place in
Just
toilet
gone.
flush.
Right.
Yes. Right.
And so I'm sitting here saying, you know what? When I was working on new products down the street at Procter & Gamble, and we didn't spend $2,000.
Yeah.
We would actually start with let's just write up the idea and put it in front of some consumers and ask them if they would buy this or not.
Come on in.
And we had some research, methodology of how to ask them the right questions and to compare them to a database.
Yeah. You're fine.
We said,
You-
hey,
Yeah.
oh, hi.
We got coffee. That's great. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
What do we
It's a
got?
Pumpkin.
Oh, wow.
Look at that.
I put it on the camera, but I would
Beautiful.
spill
Yeah,
it
you
there.
spill it. Yeah.
Just FYI, I think we'll be fine, but there's 66 minutes of
Okay.
space left.
Oh, we're good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was like, well, let me just see if we could create a version of the type of research we did before for products at Procter for startups, and hopefully let the team and CincyTech, the investor, learn a lot cheaper and quicker. And at the time there was a lot of awareness around the lean startup movement, and minimum viable product was gaining hold, but the minimum viable concept is something you could learn from before you even write a line of code.
Totally.
So that was kind of the idea there. I think you guys did well. I mean, I've still got the report somewhere if you want it.
Yeah, I think we might have gamed the system or something. But yeah, it's a cool idea. Actually, I've not heard of any VCs doing that since they're like doing
no one
testing
does
like that.
Well,
Yeah.
and again, for me, it was another way to learn without investing. I think I total put in $10,000 of not only kind of did a lot of stuff by hand, worked with a outside research company to do it pretty easily.
Yeah.
Paid a small agency to create a self-serve version of it, and I learned very cheaply and easily. No one wanted to buy that, And the first thing is, interesting for investors, they had never really paid to do any research on startups before. So there's a new budget item.
Right, you're not replacing some expense.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the way they would do research, and I think a lot still do, is let me just make my opinion. Or let me ask my wife what she thinks. Or let me ask my son or daughter what they think. And that's good enough.
Yeah, selling to VCs is hard too. You're competing with the back deck or whatever. The budget has to come from somewhere.
Right.
And so,
travel budget, they've got limited funds and but you guys, kind of did what, and another thing is in terms of providing that research for startups, some of them would just look at it as, I just need to pass a test.
Yes.
And I got validation.
Yes.
Versus really trying to learn and understand.
I remember the conclusion from it. It was we had a believability problem. And it was that.
Is it going to pick out good clothes for me? Is
it was this question of like, I love the idea, but will it work?
Yeah.
And so I remember you said that the P&G solution to that was transparent packaging or allowing people to touch the thing on the outside. Yeah. And so I think that actually influenced how we did a free trial. And we essentially opened up the doors rather than keeping it behind the paywall.
Okay.
And so I think it actually did affect in some ways.
Yeah.
So,
And that kind of got into what's more fun.
Did you unplug that?
Yeah.
Sorry. Edit and post. Chandler knows that she's
Time to print.
That she's ruining your business.
I have a printer at home that I don't know why this happens, but once a week it will print a page with like a triangle on it. I don't know where it's coming from. Yeah, I know. It's like odd. I have no idea.
It's a little scary. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, that's really cool. I was just kind of curious if you remember. I remember when we talked about that, but I'll do the introductions. I've already done the introduction separate, so we can just jump right into it. Let's talk about the lessons that you've learned. And again, I sent this over to you beforehand. You've had some time to kind of talk through it. And what I love about doing this is just that I think there are different lessons that you get at the end than when you get in the middle when you're still CEO, still fighting the battle. So obviously you've exited your business at this point. Your relationship with that business is now over. And so allowing some time to reflect on what you learned from a business standpoint, from a personal standpoint, I think there's a lot of value for entrepreneurs who are on the front side of that hill to find out what's on the other side. So you have a list of 13 things. Let's just jump right into it. Your first one, you said, was the Costanza opposite strategy. I just jumped back. We just jumped back into watching Seinfeld. So I'm hoping that's referring to Seinfeld.
Have you gotten that one yet?
I haven't yet. And then also, I think one of the people on my team they were struck with the fact that you look like Jerry Seinfeld. So I remember him bringing that up. You've never got that before.
No. I've gotten Woody from Toy Story, but
that's not unflattering. But so the Costanza opposite strategy, specifically, you said don't follow others' rule books or assume they know what you should be doing. Build a business model that works for your clients and can get you to profits.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think that comes from, and it was a great example of something that we learned mid-journey. Happened, I think you go into a startup, especially this is my first true startup from zero. And there's a lot of advice that you get. And whether it's advice of what an investor says or someone who has been in another startup, or you do a lot of reading, watch a lot of podcasts, a lot of things, and there's this certain kind of rule book that you start reading of here's how you do it, here's the playbook. And I'd say in particular, even you listen to most to investors and they're used to that. Here's a great one back then was don't worry about profit. It's all revenue. Why would you? I remember one of a very sharp investor literally saying, I don't even know why you would report profit when you're doing your quarterly numbers. Like, that's just so meaningless. And you hear that, and because you're a rookie, you go, okay, yeah, that's what you do, and I'm doing that, and let's do this, and okay, raise more money, and we just raised, and then we're talking about what's the next raise, and the first board meeting after the raise, I'm like, oh, I guess that's what you do. And I think we'll probably get into this a couple times, but when you go to the point of, okay, we're not going to get any more investment dollars, we're burning way too much money, and this company's going to be shut down unless we do something different, that moment of truth, and for me it was also, my co-founder left the company, I slid over as the CEO, and you go, okay, full stop, what's happening here? And the thing that we just started thinking was, what if all that advice was wrong? What if it's not about, what if profits are important, and what could that mean? So just almost, it was a forcing function of, let's assume whatever you hear, the opposite is actually the case. Or what if, kind of even entertaining that. And there's probably 10 strategy books that say you're supposed to do that. But for us, it just became that like, whoa, the blinders kind of came off. The illusion is to, and I hope it's not a spoiler alert for you, wherever you are in the Seinfeld saga here.
Now that you explain it,
but George Costanza literally, like at one point saying, what if I just did the opposite of everything that's my natural inclination? And he became a Superman. And so it was that kind of idea of, let's just do what's right. Let's just go back and I had run multiple profitable, high growth, businesses and brands before. Why did I forget that? Because it's a startup now.
Yes.
And that led us to just really kind of saying, it's our own thing. We've got to do what we're doing. The investors, other, blogs or posts are not going to tell us what to do. We've got to figure it out on our own.
Yeah. It's almost this thing of, have you ever played a video game where you have, what do they call them? It's like non-real players.
NPCs? Non-player characters?
Non-player characters, yes. It's the guy who just he's like a robot that just spits out words or something like that. I think there's a version of that, especially in first-time founders, where we regurgitate the lessons that we've heard from whatever, it's Naval or whatever podcast, and we just kind of we spit it back out and think this is what being a founder is.
Yeah.
When it's actually you need to be a real player. You actually have to engage your mind and say, what do I think is best? And it's interesting that it seems like, what pushed you over? Or was it just kind of gun to the head of I've been trying what everyone else is saying and it's not working, maybe I should start doing what I think?
Pretty much. Yeah, once the things that, if you're following the playbook, you realize, well, this is getting us to a position that's not going to work much longer.
Yes.
So we just, by definition, it's the definition of insanity, the hitting your head against the wall and thinking it's going to be different. I think that was big. And then just, again, there's a mentality of, we're the only ones here. We're the ones who are going to live and die on this thing. And so we have to figure it out. No one can tell us. We know the business better than anyone else.
You're not going to get a gold star for doing it how everyone wants you to do it.
Right. In fact, if it was that easy, every startup would be successful.
Yes.
So it's the ones that don't follow the rule book, I think, by and large, that end up winning.
Did you stop consuming as much content or getting as much advice at that point? Or how does that jive with actually consuming content?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, if anything, I probably read more, but getting into, throwing away more of the startup type books and posts and more of classic business and strategy and how does the world work. I think that was more key for me of understanding. Things like there's a great book. It's on human nature. It's just here's how people work. Getting deeper into that, which even helps you analyze yourself and to come up with these kinds of insights. Is
do you know what the name of that book is?
It's Robert. I'm forgetting his last name. He's the author of the 48 Strategies of War and the Laws of Power. He's got his most recent book is on human nature.
Okay.
And again, it's kind of set up as some historical figures, stories, as well as into the present day.
But you started to become the curator of what books you ought to read, as opposed to maybe letting someone else prescribe what books you ought to read.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
That's great. This is that's a huge insight. I'm sure that bleeds into your second one, which is talking about you have to control your own destiny. That seems like that was the conclusion that you said.
And that was kind of the I guess the second chapter in that crisis that we were at. We started the business focused on Pinterest marketing.
Yes.
And kind of the whole thesis was marketers are always needing to shift to how the consumer's tastes change. I kind of held a long belief that the future of marketing is less about interruption and more about adding value to the consumer's life through the marketing itself. And we bet on Pinterest as a platform that we could grow with.
Yes. And Pinterest was, it was new at the time that you guys were doing that.
It was new, it was high growth, the fastest growing startup in terms of membership.
In terms of membership, I think ever.
Yeah. And something that had that appeal of it's a platform that's not about what are your friends doing that we're trying to interrupt. It's about, hey, you're looking for ideas and inspiration, how to decorate your house, what to make for Thanksgiving dinner. And we could see obviously that marketers could use content that people actually would find useful. Here's the recipe from Kraft. Here's the decorating tip from Pier 1 or Behr Paint.
Yeah.
You know,
so you latched onto them.
Latched onto that, and also, you know, again, a little bit of maybe assuming the playbook in a wrong way. We looked at the playbook of other social platforms like Facebook and Twitter, where they developed an ecosystem of partners and literally were pushing business to those partners to help them scale and help the brand people who wanted to play get some help. And so our bet was, hey, this Pinterest thing is going to keep taking off. Marketers are going to follow the consumer's eyeballs and see that it's a better way of doing kind of content marketing. And then that Pinterest itself would welcome with open arms, and you know, it'll be a win-win-win. And we had many self-inflicted wounds in the first couple years, but the Pinterest was not exactly using that playbook, and it kind of was slower to grow, slower to create an ecosystem, and more challenging to work with, and certainly not business being thrown at us from their team. If anything, we were being cut out with existing relationships. So, hey, you don't need to work with those guys, just work directly with us.
Right, because they'll give you a customer. I mean,
Sure, yeah. So we literally said, like, and we're running out of money, you know, burning, about 55 employees at the time.
Okay.
And then, like I said, my co-founder left, and kind of our executive team were like, all right, we got to figure this thing out. What are we doing here? And we really said, like, we've got to do two things. First, get off Pinterest once and for all. We can't rely on them anymore. That bet is done. We've got to find some other business to go into. And secondly, we've got to get profitable. And, you know, we're tired of 10 cupping back to the investors, and let's find another investor. And
at this point, how much did you raise?
Oh gosh, we had raised at that point somewhere around 5-6 million. Plus, we had about maybe $1.5 million debt as well. So, and our investors basically said, okay, we'll give you one more chunk of money. This is it, you know, inside round.
Yeah.
No one else would put new money in. We went everywhere. And we said, okay, this is it. And the theme was control our own destiny. Let's stop waiting, you know, that Pinterest will be nice to us or that platform will grow. Let's stop waiting to think that our losses will keep being maintained. And so it became a company theme. And we had to, again, go down to about 30 employees from 55. You know, we made it an open thing. We said, guys, we got to find a new business. We got to get profitable. On the profitable piece, we created this this concept. If you ever heard in the startup world, you know, in one of those posts we all read, it's the setting your death date. If you've ever heard that, like, this is the day that we run out of money, and you put it on the calendar, and it's supposed to motivate you to, oh no, we could die. We created a life date, and we said, here's the date that we have to get profitable. So it's a positive spin on that.
And an opportunity for improvement as opposed to a problem.
Exactly. Something more inspirational than here's the day we die, you know, but it's implied and you get it. And, you know, we had about like 18 months, you know, kind of, we had some revenue, like we had clients on our Pinterest business with some, you know, it was some SaaS type, you know, annual revenue. But, you know, we said, this is the time that we need to get there. And that was very clear. We opened up all our books. I mean, we already were very transparent, but said, here's what it's going to be. We gave, you know, every weekly updates on where we are. Is the date adjusting forward or back based on how we were doing? And we also said, kind of our team, we've got to find something to do beyond Pinterest. And that led to, you know, we had some ideas around, could we use our data for trend identification? You know, we had some really neat assets. We had this kind of a group of, we had content creators, bloggers that were on our platform to give the content that the brands could use. We had some interesting tools for optimizing social posting. And so we were playing in different areas, but I'll never forget by keeping this open as a company activity, one of our salespeople went into a meeting with an agency, and the agency, you know, kind of doing the usual pitch, and the agency says, what you guys are doing, it's kind of like influencer marketing. And she smartly said, yes, it is. What do you mean by that? And basically, this agency said like, yeah, we do influencer marketing all the time. Here's how it works. And we had kind of seen that on the edges, and some of these bloggers that had were doing paid contracts to work with them to create content. We just came back, looked at some of the competitors, almost saw what they were doing, and said, well, what if we could do some different things as well? And that led us to kind of take one of our salespeople and just say, hey, let's keep going down that influencer path. And we were meanwhile creating a process and rejiggering our tools more for that model, creating some new things to manage those campaigns. And within that was around 2016. Before that year was done, we had kind of turned completely over to influencer. We were retiring our Pinterest clients. Revenue started doubling, 2 years in a row. Got profitable, hit our date. It was pretty awesome. But it was just kind of open sourcing that concept of we've got to figure this out ourselves, and it was really a great rallying cry too.
I heard the phrase, "Nothing clears the mind like a hanging." Right. It's like
we had lots of gallows humor on the team,
right,
and that's when when you can sit here and almost joke about, all right, well, let's have a meeting about what if we have to go to 5 people.
Yeah.
Like we had those conversations, or where I was personally wiring money from my account to hit payroll, like those situations too, where you just go, all right, we're not doing anything dumb here.
Real.
That's part of it. It's real, but
but that pain made that desire for freedom probably even greater. It was like, we've got to get out of this thing. We've got to get to a spot where we can control.
Yeah, and there's something, I think, magic about that point of no one's going to save us. It's just all here. Going from 55 employees down to 30, I had a lot of, everybody I had one-on-one deep conversations with, whether some people in positions we had to eliminate, some people were like, hey, if you're into it, we'll keep you, but if not, this is a good time to not stay on the boat. And, the 30 that remained were almost doubled down passionate, in conversations of like, Bob, I'm with you to the end, and like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So when you have that, then okay, there's nothing external to be afraid of. We're going to figure this thing out.
That's great. Yeah, and it sounds like maybe even jumping into your third point where you said, bring a better take on an existing growing market. Look where dollars and trends are already going. Was that the influencer marketing?
Yeah. I think that was part of the learning. And when we went in with our Pinterest marketing optimization software, we knew risks. I mean, we knew like, what if this Pinterest thing doesn't take off?
Sure.
What if people just want to work with them instead of us? We get cut out. I mean, all those things are there. You still though kind of jump in off the pier, and you've got the passion. But it was certainly, there was another one of those early signs on that going to influencer. On the Pinterest side, I would personally do a lot of meetings where I'm meeting with brand managers, educating them on why they should spend money on Pinterest. There wasn't even a Pinterest salesperson for them to speak with yet. So first I had to sell them on Pinterest, and then I had to sell them on why Ahalogy as your Pinterest marketing partner.
So it's a two-step.
A double
pitch.
step.
Yes.
Yeah. And as we started edging into influencer, one of our first meetings at another agency, my salesperson said, "Come up, Bob, and do a speech." And I created this presentation all about how great influencer marketing is, and then why us. And like 5 minutes in, one of the agent's people goes, "We're already buying influencer marketing. Could you just tell us how you're different?"
That's perfect.
And I was like, "Oh!" The line came down. I was like,
educating
"Wait a minute, this is great." Let me go to slide 20. And that just was magic. And you start seeing, okay, they get it. They're already in the market. And it was also, again, getting into some of the strategy. We could see, and this is why they're not happy. There was one competitor that had kind of been dominating the packaged goods influencer space. And we could see from the outside, and even just talking to these customers, like, what are the 3 things that you're not happy with them or want? They were fat and lazy and happy, and we just said, like, okay, we're going to give you, verified impressions. We're going to be able to measure your ROI, and our creative is going to be
And
spectacular.
it matched your skill sets that you'd already developed as well. Like,
Yeah, it was all these tools that we'd
Yes.
done, and some of the hard stuff of begging clients to renew with us. You get great service, you get some interesting tools and data to share, and so they were like, "Wow, we got these hungry people. Here's $50,000. We'll try you guys. We got another campaign next month. Here's $50,000. Oh, this was awesome. Here's another one. Oh, and I got my partner at the other brand down the hall. They want something too. They like you guys. Here's another one. Call my sister company in Atlanta. And then it just went.
I heard somebody describe first-time founders typically choose market risk, which you create a new market. If that happens, you typically will have like multiple, just ridiculous returns. But it's very low odds that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And typically second-time founders will choose execution risk, which is they'll say, if we can execute this, we already know the market's there and we're going to win, right? And typically those are lower outcomes, but higher odds that you'll actually get that outcome. And it almost sounds like you kind of went from trying to create a market around Pinterest to saying, we can just execute this better and win.
Yeah. Right. And then even, again, I think that's a lot of markets too. They fragment. So it was great for us we focused on the packaged goods segment of the industry. We weren't trying to get musicians. We weren't trying to get celebrities. It was micro influencers in CPG, which also happened to be an area where, I spent my career working with those kinds of brands. Here in Cincinnati, we've got a lot of people we could hire that are used to working with big brands. And, once in a while we get a sales partner say, oh, we got a opportunity with the Utah tourism, board. I was like, well, you can go for it, but I'm going to tell you, it's not going to go well. It's not going to go well. What do you mean? They got money. It's $100,000. They're really excited. Like, we've never worked with, travel before like that. They're going to be picky. They're going to be different types of marketers. Go ahead and try it. Try it. We fail. We may lose money on it, but it's not going to be the growth area for us.
Yeah, you were really mapping uniquely to your skill set and your knowledge base.
Which also ended up being great for the exit eventually, where you find your dance partner by focusing versus just spreading everywhere.
That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I feel like each of your points so far have all felt really tied to each other.
Yeah.
I feel like I can see how you kind of, it's almost a story so far at least of kind of coming into realizing, what do I actually think? What am I actually good at? What do I actually want?
Yeah.
And then once you leaned into each of those things, it seems like the floodgates opened up more.
I think that's kind of strategy, which is it's choices. And so here's these choices, which is the best one? All right, we're going to go there, and that means these are dead. Okay,
Yeah, but there's something about, there's strategy about what I ought to do, and then there's strategy about what I want to get or want to do. And I feel like want to do typically, there's something about, it's a lower seat, and so because of that, I feel like it has a little bit more velocity or something. I just noticed this in the way people talk about strategy. You can talk about it philosophically. Of like, this makes sense. Sometimes I'll hear a pitch and it'll sound more like a logical syllogism as to why they're going to succeed. And those don't typically succeed as much as people who are like, I want to win, and so I'm gonna choose a strategy that guarantees that I win. Does that make sense? I don't know. Have you noticed that pattern? Have you ever seen that before?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also even, there's almost a strategy of a strategy, which is we don't know what we're gonna do. We're putting ourselves in a position to learn and adjust. And that goes with the no plan survives first contact with the enemy kind of thing. Like, you could have a plan, but it's probably not going to work. And so knowing that going in is helpful.
But if you have a desire, like, control your getting freedom, then you can navigate.
And that's like a personal strategy.
Yes.
That's I think, and one of the things that's talked about a lot is if you're not passionate about the business, there's an infinite number of businesses any one of us could create. Doing something that you're passionate about purposely, because it's going to get you up at night, you're going to have more fun, you're going to have some knowledge, it's going to be like, oh my God, they're paying me for this? Like that kind of concept versus, all right, I got to figure out how to sell health insurance in a better way. That's not me, and knowing strategically for yourself, your personal preferences, I think, are a huge piece of the success.
Yes, and that's not selfish, that's actually just realistic.
Playing to your strengths.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some pattern I've noticed in the Midwest that we don't play that up nearly as much as I think we could.
Yeah.
Of playing your strengths or even just doing what you want. I think we tend to do maybe what others expect or something like that a little bit more.
Maybe.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the exec roundtable. I'm actually really curious about this. We never had anything like this, but you said your exec roundtable is powerful, but remote is too hard.
Yeah, so that's something that's a key learning of success of my first kind of entrepreneurial venture after leaving Procter & Gamble, our digital agency Bridge. It was really where we had a group of us, most of us had worked together in the past and had been friends, but we treated it like an equal group. I mean, it was literally kind of the Knights of the Round Table classic thing where we'd spend a morning every 2 weeks, door locked, let's talk through how the business is doing, what are we doing, like getting into it, really deep stuff. And sometimes you're yelling at each other, sometimes you're all agreeing, sometimes, rarely the CEO has to make a decision if there's a tie, but it's you go with it. And that kind of mentality I loved. It was key to our success. Each person having a different, owning a different piece, but also bringing different skills and perspectives. And so when I took over as the CEO of Ahalogy, that was something that I just really believed in recreating. And similarly, we elevated a couple people. We had some new people that came in locally, and we had at the time a head of technology that was out in San Francisco and a head of sales that was in Chicago. And while that concept of our executive team worked really well, and it was key for us to discover where to go and turn this business around and get profitable, it was really difficult to stay on the same page with those executives who were not local. And both of them did not end up staying on the journey. And it's just kind of one of those things where you go, I think both of them too, if we were all together, like having that quality time, locked in a room, a couple hours a day, you would get in sync better and learn from each other in a way that you just can't do on video, a trip once in a while.
Yes, especially when this group over here is going deeper, but you're only coming in and out. That's very difficult.
Yeah, and again, especially senior people, I think just one of those things and beliefs I have is that we're inheriting each other's lifetime's experience. And so the CRO in Chicago, the technology person in San Francisco, they were both very successful, had great careers, and yet everybody needs to change. We all have to adapt and evolve to each other, but you can't do that from afar. And you can't do that on dinner once a quarter or something. Yeah. So it just kind of became something for me in my the new playbook is, unless we have a long history together, I would just rather bring, work, with people in person that we know. And part of it goes back to selfish. Like to me, the company is like, I want to have friends. I want to work with people. I want to be able to laugh and joke and have lunch together and like just selfishly a video, and COVID is a good experience here, but like the video is not cutting it. It's not, I just don't want to do remote work. And doesn't mean that, in the future businesses that, you're forced to come to the office or things like that. We'll have to see how people's preferences and comfort settles out. But this is all like people stuff. And that's what I enjoy. Not a transactional, everything's asymmetric, everything's on Slack if you need it. Here's a video. Let's try to kill meetings. I mean, again, everything can be abused, but I think that there's not enough talk about the friendships and the camaraderie and the specialness of just like you spend 50, 60 hours a week working, you might as well have fun working with people that you love to be with,
Totally.
And my last couple of companies, we've had that. So
this is what you like.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's super. I feel like it's good to know what you want, and for also to be able to say, hey, I don't want this other thing. Have you thought a little bit about how that's going to adjust now with COVID stuff, or are you kind of like,
we'll see.
Start the next company after? Yeah.
Well, we're working on something now, but it's not going to scale up to that for I'm sure a couple of years. But But I think there is a certain point of it goes into, hey, you create the company that you want, and you'll attract other people that want that same thing. And so, you know, I just a side thing, story that I love is the company that bought us. This is like last holiday period. There was a holiday party at their office in New York City that I happened to be in town for, and I went to it. And I was riding up the elevator at this very fancy restaurant for this, you know, very cool thing. Everybody's dressed up, and there was a couple employees at that office, and they were talking together. They didn't know we were, you know, in the same group. And they're like, "Well, I'm glad this party is on a Tuesday, because, you know, I would hate to have to go to a party with my coworkers if it was like on a Saturday." And, you know, we had just had, you know, 2 months earlier, a giant party on a Saturday night for our whole office because we hit a company milestone in our earn-out. And people love to get together on a weekend. Like that concept of, could you imagine working at a company where people feel like it's a chore to get together with coworkers on a weekend, on a precious weekend, versus I can't wait to get together with my coworkers. This is so fun. I don't want to work on the former. Like I want to do the latter. And so how do we do that? What does it take to make that kind of company? Because the business, the money, all that stuff, yeah, it's there. There's lots of ways to make money. There's lots of ways to do business, but why don't we set it up so we can enjoy it together as much as possible?
Absolutely. And if you're enjoying the work environment, you're going to work harder, right? Because you're playing while everyone else is working. Like this is, it's great.
Yeah. And again, if bad things happen, you figure it out. You know, there's no stress. There's no. I mean, this is human. How do you play to human nature? How do you play to what we want to do versus, again, some other rule book of the work, you know, life divide or whatever.
That's great. That's really good. Tell me about your number 5 was promote from within is a stronger path than assuming senior external hires are going to know better.
Yeah. So again, similarly of that point of those couple executives outside of Cincinnati that we brought in, had a very expensive headhunter, you know, did a long search, and the folks that we replaced them with and how we grew the team ended up coming from internal promotions. One was a woman who we hired right out of college who got some amazing opportunity. As we were shifting into influencer, she started taking over our paid social media work, taught herself how to do that, and, you know, got to the position where she was leading a team of paid social buying, working with external vendors, and we said, hey, you've got to be on the executive team because you're running a big chunk of important for our business. We need you in this group. So here's a promotion, you know, here's this, and now you've got a seat at the round table. We did that with 4 other people, all female leaders. Some came from a couple right out of college, basically, a couple that had a few years experience. And I think you get to that point, back to the executive team, the magic there is you start as a CEO, you go, I don't want to make a decision. You know, that the ironic thing is, like, you start learning, if I'm making a decision, we're going to fail. Because I can't be there all the time. I don't know what's going on with the paid social. If I have to learn that, you know, then we're not scaling. And so there's this kind of magical thing happening when you start going, okay, my job is just to turn this over to other people. Not in a, I'm done with it, you know, we're all representing it.
You're actually more the connector and facilitator.
Like, for me, if we had to make a decision, I felt naked if I didn't have the other executive experts weighing in. And so again, I think there's something really special about promoting from within at all levels. And, you know, some of it is, honestly, you avoid the baggage that a lot of people have, that you have to unwind.
It's a known entity,
Yeah, I mean, come in fresh, you know, new perspective. You're almost, you get to grow people's brains from scratch, you know, and they don't have...
it's a custom build. As opposed to some off-the-shelf stock. You know, I don't know if it's going to fit. It's like, oh, this is...
Yeah, and especially things like, you know, again, thinking about culture and trust. A lot of people have worked at companies that don't have great culture, and they don't trust their leaders. And so it's hard to get that out of them.
Re-education.
Yeah. Versus, let's just get somebody who's positive and ready to go, and they can learn the right way from the beginning, and then you just throw more, as you grow, you just throw more responsibility. Why would we go pay another recruiter, have somebody, like, let's just see if we can figure this out ourselves, give somebody an opportunity, and what's the worst thing that's going to happen? They don't fit so well, and then you can go hire the expert or try something different.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean that's and then again, it's also fun just like seeing people.
Oh, it's so
go,
gratifying to see someone grow.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Like things that they never thought they could do, and boom.
Yes, especially if you create an environment that allows for growth and trying things as opposed to just like one mistake and you're done or something like that.
It is the downside sometimes. I mean, like. I've had many conversations with people, especially the downside of especially the younger hire coming in is they tend to think, what's the path? Everybody wants, what's my path? What's my career path? And when am I going to get promoted? And they see their friend get promoted at a big company or, the large companies in town.
P&G, they got a new role every 9 months.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, the speech is, we don't have it. You're going to figure it out. Go grow something, go build something, or you come and tell me, but hey, Bob, I'm working with clients and I see that they need X and I think I should go lead that. All right, go, or at least try and we'll see. That's very unusual for a lot of people. But when you can think that way, it opens up a lot of people's, eyes to what can be done. And then if some people want the more formal career path, that's good to go there. That's all of us finding our way.
Sure. Have you ever given too much responsibility too quick and then had to back off?
I mean, I've seen some people struggle in bigger jobs, but not really. I mean, in their, like, the fact that you're giving them the responsibility and the try, usually they figure that out first. They actually come back and say, what, I'm trying this, I'm discovering this is not what I want to do, or that I'm not fit, or I think we need something different. And that's the better way to go. And again, there's also micro examples of that all the time, like the salesperson I said that, tried the Utah Tourism Board. Yeah. This is going to fail. I've been there, I've seen it, I did it myself, but there's something, as long as it's not going to screw things up, let people learn by trying and failing.
Sure.
And then they might surprise you and get it done, and then you're wrong, which is it's a win no matter what. But just giving people enough rope, I guess, to not totally hang themselves, but to try.
You sound like a good parent of 2 teenage girls. Like that seems like a good parenting policy too, especially the older kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully. They keep going. They're doing well. But.
Yeah. We'll talk about that. I think it's related to number 6 here. You say a process mindset helps you grow without stress. So it's this idea of embracing the process maybe rather than say more.
Yeah, I think that was again something that I learned at our previous agency. Agency work is all about it. To make money, you've got to be efficient. Client's going to pay X or this $1 an hour. How do we manage time? How do we manage projects? And so. Very early, a key to our success was finding how can we get something repeatable and just do it the same way. And I think moving over into the startup world, that's, you have to experiment and test a lot of things and do a lot of things that, by hand or that are not scalable. But it's really about once you find something that you want to repeat, it becomes, okay, let's create a way of doing something. And that's a mentality that a lot of people don't have naturally. I think the word process, unfortunately, tends to get lumped into like bureaucracy.
Yes.
And we have 10 people have to sign this expense report, and you have to go to this software and that software. But it's more like, what's a way we're going to do something? Can we all just agree? We're going to do it this way. When someone gets hired, here's how we onboard them. We bring them in. They spend the first half hour going through the paperwork. Someone invites them to lunch, the whole team takes them to lunch, here's how you just expense it, we do that. And so you don't have to think. That's how the brain is actually organized. Most of what happens up here is not truly thinking. We go through the motions, we get in a shower and we don't think about it.
You got a patch, you put the patch in and exactly.
Exactly, the more you can, it's the cognitive load minimized so that you have less stress, you can and then you can spend that brain time on where it's better used, of creativity or problem solving or people issues and things like that. And so that was something where, we just built this habit of, even, something went wrong. Okay, we did this campaign and we spent too much money by hiring an expensive influencer. What happened there? Like, what did we learn? We learned this. Okay, let's adjust the process so that on this kind of situation, we just put a flag that we should double check X, Y, and Z. Done. No one's in trouble, no one made a mistake, no one screwed up, we learned something, we adjust the process.
And you had
We
something
don't have think
to
about it.
adjust. There's
Yeah.
something about having a document or
Yeah.
whatever to be like, great, we fixed it.
Yes.
Something about that, it feels like you have some closure and like you won't repeat it.
Yes.
Right? It's
Yes.
okay to have new mistakes, but you don't want to be repeating the same old mistakes over and over.
And then the mentality too is, as the CEO, we'd make mistakes or find opportunities and people would just fix it on their own. And I wouldn't even know about it. Like, that's the beauty. Like, we screwed something up and we had a $10,000 loss on that. But it's okay, we fix it here, we did a little adjustment there, and the process is happening and we're not going to do it again. Okay. Done. Awesome. This is beautiful.
That makes a ton of sense. Were those processes actually documented?
Yeah, like Google Docs.
Google
things
Docs,
like that.
they just, and are people literally applying these processes? Like, we know the X, then Y, that's what,
Yeah. New campaign, here's checklists, what are the things, again, even especially things like serving a client, how do you make it easy for them? Give them a prompt. Don't ask them the same thing over and over. How can you, and even things like you having a process makes it easier for the client, which makes it easier for them to come back to you. We'd say things like that we would even create a process for, we have a new client we're working with. We know that's always a pain in their butt. They have to give them the brand assets and what's the legal rules of what they can say and they can't say and how do they like reporting done. And so we would almost go in and say, hey client, this one's going to be hard. This one's going to be kind of painful because we haven't worked together. But the good news is we're creating a process for you. And, we go to after the campaign is done, we have a wrap-up meeting, which has its own process to make it easy. And if there was a mistake or something the client wasn't happy about, we would frame it as, and we didn't know that your product has to be shot with this light and, have this kind of thing behind it. And we did fix that by doing a reshoot. And now that we know that, we've added that to our process. So when we work on our next campaign with you, it won't happen. And they're like, thank you. Like, you not only fixed it, you solved it. And so, of course, they're going to work with you on the next campaign.
Absolutely.
Because you've gone through and done that.
Absolutely. You're actually growing in value every time that you fix the process.
Right. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I really like that. I'm tempted as you're talking. I'm literally tempted to be taking notes. I'm like,
if only this was video recorded and put into a Medium post somehow, organized by chapter.
This is fantastic. Yeah. Okay, on number 7, you said post product market fit, which I want you to define in a second. Your main job is scaling people through vision, responsibility, transparency, and values. First, how do you define product market fit? Or how do you
It's funny, I was just reading another, one of these posts about what
Paul
that
Graham's
is.
Everyone's got a definition. But like in your own mind, if you were trying to explain it to my 9-year-old.
Something that kind of sells itself. Not that people are just necessarily coming to you and begging, with their money out, but just you have kind of a process where we know this is something people like. If we present it in a certain way, there's a high chance of that person converting into a sale. And if we do that one campaign, one sale, there's a high probability that if we do it well, they will buy more. Like, so the machine just starts rolling of what you're selling. And so when you get to that point and you're not making decisions, not even having to solve many problems because of this mentality, people are figuring it out on their own. I think it then becomes, okay, how do we just, we're growing people now. It becomes a little bit of a productive paranoia kicks in, which is things are going well, but what could go wrong? Is kind of, I think, always something that I've had. And the thing that could go wrong is, as we're hiring more people, what if we don't get the right people? Or what if, that was one key. So the folks coming in and being a guard for that, And the second element is people are working so well, and we got our culture humming, but it's whether it's what's the entropy factor in physics of the sun eventually fades. There's if you don't maintain the garden, weeds come in. And so there's a natural tendency of, we've got our people working well together. What if something happens? What if there's a problem in the system, if there's a cancer or whatever? And so that really became over half of my time, was various ways of making sure that the people were working well and the magic kept going. So for me, that would be things like, I do quarterly one-on-ones with every employee, at least a half an hour. It's a great way to stay in touch. Here's what's going on. Communicate things that you're trying to get across. Hear their issues. Kind of do little pockets of data samples of individual people. I do final interviews for everybody we hired. This sounds weird, but the most powerful thing about Slack is you get to see what people are saying. You get to basically, spy on conversations and see, are people treating each other well? Are there arguments going on? Like, is it active? Are people talking about getting together for the happy hour on a Wednesday? Or those little. We had another thing we use this tool called Office Vibe, which does a kind of a culture survey to everybody. I think it's once a week or every other week, and it's anonymous, so people can say whatever they want. That was the first email I would read, any comment there, and take that, and whether it was respond to the person anonymously, or if they identified themselves with an idea or a complaint or a question, hey, let's go talk about this. Often I would bring the comment up in the middle of a all-company meeting and say, hey, someone said this. How do we feel about that, guys? Let's talk about this, And so those are some of the things. And then I think part of the people strategy becomes, how do you design the business around, what is a culture? And I don't know if someone said this or read it, but for me, a high performance culture is where people are all clicking, and there's 4 elements of that. The first is having a vision. Where are we going? This is our hypothesis. If we build this kind of great company, if we do this together, there's some way we can improve the world and be successful in lots of different ways. Here's where we're going. Another part is giving responsibility and accountability. And that goes to a couple things I've said. My favorite way, I love to have this little speech with a new hire. I draw out an org chart on a piece of paper. Like, here's me at the top, and here's the executive team, and here's, some managers, and here's you, one of these boxes at the bottom. And then I turn it upside down. Go, you're at the top. You guys who are running projects, who are talking to clients, who are selling, who are writing code, you are the top of the pyramid. And us in leadership are just there to support you. So go do the right thing, make decisions, know that you have that power, and we're here to support you, to help, check in, if there's something you're having an issue with, and that's not a speech, that's real. Like, that is, you cannot build a business, a strong business, unless you're giving people that kind of responsibility and accountability, and they make it happen. Like, that's something, it's just humanity. Like, we do that.
We love that. We love responsibility.
This is all like how we work. This is like, wow, we like to know where the ship is going.
Yes.
We like to have agency over what we do.
Yes.
Transparency is the third piece. We like to know, why was this decision made? Or, and again, so we'd spend a lot of time in the executive team going, I think we need to make a change. That'd be 10% of the discussion. 90% is, well, how do we get feedback and double check this and help people understand why we're making this change? Like actually caring about how we communicate and whether we've got the right decision. And again, that is like a ship. When you're counting on people, you've got to show them why we're going in this direction or whatever. And then finally, it's the values, and really making sure that the people on that journey all have some general agreement about how we're going to treat each other and how we're going to work. And we had created kind of a manifesto, we called it, a lot of it was defining what our values are. And putting that on the website for everybody to see, so that when you applied, you actually see, oh, this is what this company is about. Things like productive paranoia, like that's what we want to have, and that's how we're going to talk. Things like creativity, that's what we do. We want you to bring creative ideas and thoughts in your own way. Respect for each other, some of those things that when we all do that and we police each other on that, then again, we're comfortable with, you kind of you have people that just, it doesn't take long to get in and fit in, because they've almost self-selected.
You're pre-screening a little bit.
Exactly. And that was a lot of our interviews, was a little bit of, can you do the job, or do we think you might be able to do the job? And then mostly like, do you have the values that match up with
Can you
what
tolerate us, and can we tolerate you? Right? It's like, is this going to work?
That one, it's a story that I love to tell real quick, is I learned that from a client of ours, the coolest marketing client I've ever had at my agency, which is Red Bull. And a buddy of mine worked at Red Bull, and he told me that their interview process was basically, you'd have 5 kind of peers interview a person, and they would ask questions about, do you fit with the character of Red Bull? They have like 8-10 keywords, things like mystery. Mystery is one of the brand equity, elements of Red Bull. And so you would get questions to see if you have mystery as part of your personality.
I don't know. Do I?
Yeah. And if one of those 5 people said you're missing one of those 8 or 10, elements, you're out. No matter how good your skills are, what school you went to, or what have you. And the way that came into play, he told me the story of one of their leaders who was kind of came back. He was reading leading another country. He came back to lead North America. First thing he did is canceled the strategy meetings that they had. He said, "We hired you because you know the brand. Just go do what you think is right." And so as a client, they didn't have our agency come and bring them ideas. It was like we were all talking ideas together.
That's cool.
And so that kind of element of just to hire the people that already have some of the characteristics that you want.
And that's what's required in order to empower people to be at the top of the organization, right?
Exactly.
Like, otherwise, you actually feel like you need to be on top in order to just control everyone from scattering away. Yeah. Oh, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, I'm kind of curious, because now I think we're shifting a little bit in lesson number 8. Now we're going to talk about more toward the end.
Okay.
So you talk about, first off, you talk about M&A, so mergers and acquisitions. It's about hanging around the hoop and having focus and options, which sounds like a contradiction, so I'm kind of curious about that. Yeah.
No, that's good. And so the process of starting to think about an exit really came as we were getting the product market fit. We've got our process down, we're growing, we're profitable, we're doubling revenues. I am a believer that you should always consider, exit as an option. And especially as a venture-backed company, you're going to have an exit someday. And so let's not pretend that it's going to wait. And things don't, things will just pop into your lap very often. So you've got to think strategically about how you're doing that. We similarly at our digital agency, we kind of learned by talking with other people, you get to about 10 million in revenue. Here's the set group of holding companies that are going to look, and there's kind of a model there. And so in our space, I kind of put together a plan, and this is kind of what my job is, that everybody else is doing a great job running the business. All right, I'm going to focus on people, but I've got to do something else.
Yep.
And kind of put a strategic plan together that was first just a lot of relationship building, but targeted, focused relationship building.
What did that look like?
Started off just saying, in this area we were working in, influencer marketing, digital media, CPG, we created kind of almost a bullseye type model of here's the handful of companies that would be the best fit for us to be acquired by. Yeah. And then there's almost like a second degree. Here's some that are somewhat fits, and then here's the wild cards.
You identify a company, like, are you just cold outreach? Hey, can we hang out sometime? Like, what does that look like?
Yes.
Like through LinkedIn, or what did you do? Like,
I kind of put those together and would go, hey, this is Bob. Some intros, some cold. Hey, it's Bob. We're running this business down here, and very open. Like, hey, I'm running $7-8 million a year business, working with the same clients. We actually are salespeople even partner together on something. Let's talk. And
just let's talk.
Yeah,
so it's
it'd be good to get to know you, talk. I mean, again, some of them have like a corp dev person or biz dev person that is
and that'd be the
center.
contact.
Others
That'd
are
be
more
the person
C-level
you'd be going
people.
for. Okay.
Yeah, and so they, sometimes you get, well, you should talk to so-and-so or so-and-so. Fine. And it really is like, it's been said 100 times, but it's like a dating process. And
I was homeschooled, so I have no idea what you're talking about.
I got married to right out of college, so I'm saying, but the process is like it is a relationship, and I one of the things that you do too is have relationships with other players in the game, and one of the big players in the game is investment bankers, and in our industry, there's a kind of a niche group of technology investment bankers that work and negotiate these kind of deals on either side, and I was able to use my network to say who are 5 or 10. I'd start off like 8 iBankers that I would just talk to. That's their job, is to build relationships. Absolutely. So that you call them up when you get an offer. And of the 8, I'd had a few calls and use those conversations to say who knows, who's offering me help, who sounds like they kind of know this business, who maybe made an intro. And then I'd go back to them once a quarter and just check in, and you get a ton of industry advice. Like the hang around the hoop came from a guy named Yale, who's out in San Francisco, works with a lot of these things. He's like, you know what? You get profitable, you guys are unprofitable, like that's a thing everybody wants right now. The marketing tech ecosystem is, kind of ups and downs, but really what you want to do is keep running your business, be there for a rebound, or a layup when somebody's ready. And
so you didn't start a formal process with an investment banker?
No. This is all free networking advice.
You're just kind of hanging around, talking to people.
Yeah.
And then was there a point, I don't know if we talked about it later, was there a point when suddenly an offer came in, or when all of a sudden you're like, maybe we should be exclusive, start going steady, as opposed to just dating
Well,
around?
it was interesting. I mean, one thing that was helpful, of that list of, call it 4 companies that were in our space, bigger, did not offer much of a competitive solution, if at all, and we're actively making acquisitions. So those are all the things that are good signs. One of them we did some partnerships with, kind of almost bottom up, salesperson to salesperson, doing good things. But it was the eventual acquirer, Quotient, somebody that I had met at a big industry conference. His job is to go and find companies like ours, so it's nothing to be weird or ashamed of. And we had a meeting, kind of 2016, and he's just like, okay, get in on the radar. We check in every 6 months, and we talked, and he's like, showing more, showing we're interested. He's kind of like very open in return, which is such a great relationship thing of, I'm interested in you guys, but we're doing another deal now, so you're probably not going to hear from me for 6 months, but then let's talk. And then, but sometimes the companies, the hang around the hoop is eventually they're going to need something, whether it's in a strategic acquisition, it's here's a piece of technology, here's a product line, they need to fill gaps in the portfolio, a competitor is beating them in some area, and so you just want to be there so that they've got a strategy meeting, and they say, these meetings are happening, right now, and they're, someone pounds a table and say, oh, we don't have anything in influencer marketing.
I know,
we need to
guy
do
Bob.
something.
Right, exactly.
Oh yeah, there's that guy Bob.
You
We
need to
saw
be
him
there.
at a thing. Oh, he seemed like a nice guy. I'll call on him up. And so like that's the game. And then, in terms of options, I think there's 2 pieces that come in. One was because I had other relationships with other companies. When that phone call comes and it feels like it's getting serious, I was able to say, hey, other companies, we might be getting serious with someone else. Are you interested?
Yes.
And so that gives you other options of, ultimately you want to get some competition going.
Gives you some leverage.
In that kind
Absolutely.
of game.
Yeah.
And, we did get a competing offer, and it wasn't a heavy back and forth, but it was like something where at least
Keeps
might,
everyone honest, kind of going
yeah, I
through.
mean, the competing offer can either give you truly like a bidding that gets your price up, or it can give you some confidence that this is right. So just knowing for the board and everybody else, like, okay, we got one offer, but if we could get another one and just know where it is. So that was helpful. But was also helpful in the options is not having to sell.
Sure.
And the
Because
beauty
you're
of profit
profitable.
and the beauty
That's
of doubling.
such a different thing.
I
Yes.
mean, it was very, stressful, like the whole process, but not in a stress of, oh my God, we have to take this or we're going to be dead.
But there's some stress of ambiguity, because when you think a year from now, you're like, I don't know what a year from now is, depending, it's kind of a big fork in the road.
Yeah.
How long was that process? And separately, did you end up hiring one of those bankers then to run that process?
Yeah, so we ended up, the process, like, I think, it was more like, let's see, kind of things started getting real in January 2018. And then lots of, due diligence light, due diligence heavy, just, multiple meetings of flying out somewhere and spending a half a day and kind of going through, here's the business. And the fun thing there, again, is, one thing I think in the classic playbook where people worry about people getting your data and finding out and competing, no one's competing. Like, it's so hard to do anything at a big company. And even the folks that were at our acquirer who were pretty close in our space, they didn't really get what we were doing. Like, it's like they got their own businesses to run.
Sure.
They were just more of like, okay, I'm testing you, I'm seeing it, seeing if the numbers are real, and then, if anything, they go, yeah, this is good. And of course we can't do that. We don't have time for that. We don't understand that space. They're already doing it. And we've got cash, like, let's make it happen.
I think you often see what you're looking for on that thing. I think, like, if you expect people to be, trying to steal from you or something like that, you tend to find people who are like that.
Yeah.
But if you're kind of like, no, I know that I'm helpful.
Yeah.
Like, I think generally
being open creates openness from the other side too.
Yes.
Like, and that leads, because that's all we want. It's not. It was all about creating a bigger pie. And that was something too where we could go in and say, well, we don't have to sell. We're profitable. We're doubling. Like, we're on fire right now. No one's breathing down our necks for growth. Mm-hmm. And so, like, even as we were talking and things were getting more real, Ryan, our COO, and I, we were just like, okay, remember, they could totally come in and pull the rug out from under us. We don't have to sell. Like, just remember every day. Just remind each other. It's that little voice.
Yes.
Remember, before we talk about this, we don't have to sell. We don't need to sell. We'd be happy not to sell. And that just helps your mindset. Using the investment banker, I went through that. That's a mini, decision to make there. And lots of opinions on all sides. But the tipping point was really, this is someone who I had built a relationship with, I had a lot of trust with. He offered the best I kind of picked the best of those four that I was having conversations with. And, hiring them kind of, it is expensive. I mean, it's a chunk of money, but, I think one thing is just like a real estate agent buying a house, like, these are the experts. They know what they're doing. Their job is to represent you.
You know those terms that are super important too.
They know the things, like just having somebody you can chat with.
Yes.
And, and one of my favorite people, who's kind of been was a mentor for me in this whole process, he's full of these little sayings like, companies are bought, not sold, and you go, oh yeah. And one of his sayings is, pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered.
Yes.
Meaning if you try to be too greedy, that kills you. And so let's sprinkle it around for everybody.
Yes.
Let's get some of the investment banker because that's going to be smart.
Yep.
That helps a mindset.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So then talk about on the other side of that then. You said that earn-out is a team effort, so reward the entire team in a meaningful way.
Yeah, and so that's a great segue. When we were negotiating, one of the things that part of our negotiation was if you try to price this the way the business is today, we were running about a $10 million a year run rate. So if you apply a traditional model of pricing some multiplier on revenue or EBITDA, that's not for a high growth business. And so we're sitting here saying, well, if you're trying to apply that formula, we're going to double next year. So it's almost smarter for us to just pause on a year, and then you're going to write a much bigger check because there's nothing stopping us. We've got a great product. We'll hire some more salespeople. We're going to keep going. And so that led us into that share the pie. How do we win together? Give us some incentive for growing. You could buy us now, but let's have some upside here that, we're in. And again, that was similar to our agency sale. That was a 5-year earnout.
Okay.
How agencies are usually sold, you get like a very small piece up front, like 10%, and then the 90% is potential based on, in that case, it was revenue and profit goals over a 5-year period. In our case, kind of the target price was $40 million, $20 million up front, $20 million and a 1.5-year earnout based on sales growth targets, but with an extra $10 million possible upside if we kind of exceeded. So it's kind of like if you're 50% higher than that, you can get up 50% more on that 20. So that was like a really neat way to do it. We had some things where you make sure we still get some control of the business, because everything was running really well.
You didn't change locations?
No location. And you just we said like, look, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. We're not going to be obstinate, obviously, on some things. Use your HR software and have your computers or distribute. But at the same time, we're not going to change our pricing. We want to maintain our brand. We got a good thing going. Let's keep that going. And but another thing we did, and this was kind of something that back at our agency, when we had that long earnout, our executive team got together and we said, boy, we've got some amazing people out here. How do we keep them engaged for this long haul? And we said, well, why don't we pick a handful of the top leaders in the business and let's get them a piece of the action. They weren't shareholders. It was just our group that was shareholders. And so we created kind of like a shadow equity pool somewhat. And we pulled them in and we said like, hey, you guys are, we want to lock you in too. Here's a plan. And we carved off a piece of our earnout money for them. And that worked out incredibly well. Interestingly, another agency in town that I'm not going to share, some of our people went over there. They sold their agency and expanded that idea. And they did very well and maxed out their earnout. And so for our business, looking at that, we said, an earnout is about like the people doing the work. And so for us, for all the shareholders, the investors, it's in our interest to have this team that's running on all cylinders to be fully motivated. And there's going to be stress. They're not going to be part of a startup anymore. And so let's get people locked in and motivated. Plus, although we'd offered options for all of our employees, because of some of our down years, and we had to, the valuation went down, we had 2 times preferences, so most people's common equity was not going to be a lot. And, there's a combination of the business, what is just smart for the business, and what's good people stuff. And I'm a big believer in the good people stuff, and I think that motivated me. But even if you're just a hardcore, caringless capitalist, you go, oh, you know what? Let's offer some incentive for these employees.
Turns out people work harder.
To max this thing out.
Absolutely.
And so in our discussions with Quotient, I made that very clear of like, we're looking for something there. And I said, okay, well, how about, we'll put 10% of the earnout into a employee pool. And you can, you guys are leading, you can decide how to distribute that. Now, what most people do is give it to the executives only. And it's like a special executive carve out.
Sure.
We said we want everybody to get it. And we took that and we said, okay, we had a couple of different layers, based on kind of level in the company, but like for our executive team, we all got the same thing. For our next level managers, they all got the same thing. And I got to have conversations with every single person and say, okay, we're selling the company, now, and here's what we're doing for you. And if we hit this earnout, here's a number you're going to get. And there was tiers that day of wow, not like not we're selling the company cry, but like, oh my God, you're offering me this, like these, and it ended up being the kind of money, if we hit our target, it was basically like a year's annual salary for everybody. And
Actually, that was fairly incentivizing.
it was,
Yeah.
and it felt really good. I mean, that's the, like, everybody was together and seeing that and knowing that, people paying off their student loans or buying a house or
Yeah.
being able to get married a year early or, have an amazing trip that they've always wanted to do.
That life impact's real.
And so that was something that, again, some of our investors were like, I've never seen anyone do that before. That's unusual. It's like, well, we're doing it, so, and none of them are complaining because we maxed it out. And, in fact, we maxed it out like 3 months before the deal was done.
That's awesome.
And then we did one more thing because we had people who started after the acquisition. We wanted to have something else, incentive for everybody and spread it around. And
Set of steak knives.
A little better than that.
Yeah.
We said like, we had 3 different goals. We had like, what's something if we're in the money? What's something if we hit kind of the base goal? And what's something if we max it out? And so we had the first thing was a trip out to, we went to the day before the Kentucky Derby. We had a big trip, for
That's
a
cool.
day out there. Then we had a big party at Blink last year, took over a place on the banks. And then we had teased this that we would have a trip if we hit our max. And so we took everybody to Cancun, second weekend in March, like literally right before the world went to hell. We had a couple people dropped out because it was starting to get a little nervous, a few people, but there were no travel restrictions and anything, and we just got it right under the wire.
Wow.
And it was the most amazing, 3 days of party and fun, and it was a life peak experience.
That's
just
fantastic.
amazing.
That's really cool.
Even though you got COVID.
No, everybody was good. There were some hangovers involved, some epic hangovers there, but it was great.
That's good. Talk about, I guess, on the downside of it, don't assume that big companies are better managed. In fact, you said it's usually worse.
Yeah.
So there's the upside. Talk about the downside of that.
Yeah, I mean,
This is a learning for you.
Yes, and I've been in big companies. So again, starting at Procter & Gamble, I was in a big bank, first job out of school, selling our agency. We became part of a big holding company. And, it was another, seeing up close and personal what a big company is like after being acquired. And there is just something that you forget that, you think, here's this big company, it's, amazing, and boy, they're strong enough to buy us and public and everything else. And you just kind of tend to assume that you're going to learn more, they're going to have a better way of doing things. And that's not necessarily the case. And I think that, I think somewhat, a thing that I've learned, and I think it's across the board is, you've got companies become successful for some reason. Every company starts as a startup, doing exactly what we've done of like clawing and grabbing and trying to get to something that people will buy and a repeatable process and product. And they become successful. And then there's a tendency, like you're riding on your success. Like it's that, whether it's inertia or entropy, I forget which physics point, but you start bringing in people that did not build that business, that are, managers versus leaders. And, but the product is still doing well, it's chugging along, clients want it, they build it in, but there can be kind of some deterioration of the company. And I think that's the thing that you have to fight. But the large companies, most of them, whether it's IBM or, Apple, whatever, you can see that decline happen.
Atrophying, yeah.
Yeah, as people come in and I think the thing that we saw coming in was we just come off figuring out and learning things that a lot of people who have spent their careers in large companies, they've never had to learn. There were some things we do about the process piece. Like, we have a process for everything, and these guys don't have a process. Like, what? And we try to share, well, hey, what if we had a process? And it would just go right, over the head. And you just kind of go, well, they just don't see that. It's like you can see color and some people can only see in black and white. You go, wait, but that's blue, and that's what is this blue you speak of?
Yes.
Like what? Like, and so again, it's not evil, but it's just not seeing that, and that can be kind of, you know, that is sad. I mean, in many ways, because people aren't exposed to those things, but it ends up, you know, I think leading to a lot of why do most companies have to make acquisitions? Because they don't have the people and the process and the spirit to innovate from within. And, you know.
Yeah, which is so interesting because you came from a fairly corporate environment. Do you think that you would have been would you have noticed that difference as much, or was it that journey going through the startup journey that actually you changed?
Well, I mean, I will say I went to Procter with more of an entrepreneurial mentality. Like, I was working with startups when I was getting my MBA.
Okay, so this is part of your blood.
90s, you know, startup time, and I went to Procter looking at, I'm going to be there for 3 or 4 years, learn a lot, and go follow in the path of Meg Whitman or Steve Ballmer, who, you know, Scott Cook, Steve Case, who came to Procter for a couple of years, learned something, and then went off. And the weird thing about my Procter time, like, I started in new products where it was kind of like startups within the big company. And, you know, our job was, we've got to create new $100 million a year categories to clean stuff that has never been cleaned before. And that led to some failures, like my first product, Fit Fruit and Vegetable Wash, which is a natural soap for your produce. No one wanted that. It was A.G. Lafley called it in his book the worst new product launch in Procter & Gamble's 180-year history.
Have you put that on your LinkedIn?
Yes.
You definitely should put that on your LinkedIn. That you were like the worst.
It's a little Easter egg for people,
amazing.
but I also got to launch Mr. Clean Magic Eraser, which was like one of the biggest successes with the smallest
We had
budget.
5 kids. We use that thing all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, I think I was lucky enough to see some of the big company benefits of some leadership and some process and promote from within.
Yeah.
But not come in thinking I'm going to stay there forever. Like, what can I get out of this? What can I learn? And being lucky enough to go into the new products area, you know, was helpful to get some of that perspective.
That's great. That's really helpful to be able to see those two different worlds. Okay, so the kind of the final section of this, you had a couple personal learnings through this process as well. Because we talked a lot on like the corporate culture, we talked a lot on the M&A and like that exit side, which I think is really helpful. So you had 3 kind of personal learnings. One was if you're working past 60 hours or losing sleep, then it's time to seriously reconsider your business and life. I'm sure this is purely academic.
Yeah. I think that's something that, you know, that if it goes into, if you're not having fun, something's wrong. You've got to make different choices. And that could be, you know, I think there's a lot of time where I've worked 60 hours a week or more, and I wish I could work more. You know, I loved it, having fun. The times when you're just grinding away on something is when you need to take a step. And grinding away can either be literal hours or losing sleep at night. And so...
Did that ever happen with you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's trying to sell, you know, it kind of goes into the days when we were trying to build this new market around Pinterest tools. There was a lot of, you know, we made mistakes of raising too much money and like jumping into sell, get a client, what's the, you know, pipeline, when we didn't have the product that was flying off the virtual shelves yet. You know, pushing water uphill, but not having honest conversations with ourselves or each other about what are we doing here? You know, why are we taking all this money? Why are we, you know, so I think learning to take that step back and go, almost the forcing function, or earlier we were talking about the strategy of the strategy, like let's do the stuff we like and spend time there. It doesn't mean be lazy, it doesn't mean anything's easy, but find the easier path, I guess. And I think that kind of goes against the grain of some of the startup hustle, you know, porn that's talked about a lot of, well, yeah, if it's failing, you just got to keep going. And I'm sure you has talked to a lot of startup founders that you're like, this thing's not working. How do I just tell him or her to stop? That's okay to stop. Like, it's not, the answer is not.
There's some real power in getting hopeless in a direction, because that means that there could be hope in another direction.
Yeah.
But you have to first get hopeless with this direction.
Yeah.
And so if you can't get hopeless, then it's almost sealing your fate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. On the sleep side, I've had trouble sleeping on and off, really started in the startup world. And my conclusion, which I've spent hours thinking about in the middle of the night, mostly from 3 to 5, is I think often lack of sleep or insomnia is your subconscious reaching out, saying, please pay attention to these important things. Like you even said, we're not having honest conversations about it.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like your subconscious takes over and just says, well, if you're not going to talk about if you're not going to talk about it in the daytime, I'm going to think about it at nighttime. And it's like, I'll take the night shift.
Unresolved things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, normally if I see that happening, it means that I'm not walking in the right direction. Yeah. And that probably makes sense too. Like if you're working 60 hours and it feels like 60 hours, then you're probably not walking in the right direction. And it maps back into kind of doing what you want. That like people who win typically are doing it. It doesn't feel like that sort of grind. That's really interesting. Did you, in that sort of switch, did you know that at the time? Did you know that was a warning sign, or did you think this is just what it is?
Just a lot of personal conversations and debate. I'd say.
Yeah.
I never truly just bought into I guess this is. I'm not hustling enough, but I think that it's either a blessing or a curse or sometimes one of each, but I'm almost constantly talking to myself about, is this the right thing? Is this the, kind of some, but I'd almost say I have a mini midlife crisis every hour, not, so instead of letting it all bunch up at once and then buying the sports car and whatever, it's like, let me just constantly analyze myself a little bit and hopefully that leads to a better choice, I guess.
How did that affect, so your daughters were in junior high, late elementary school? Talk about how that affected them and how that affected your wife as you're kind of doing that sort of process.
Yeah, I think for my kids, they don't see anything. I mean, they again, I'm not, if I'm in town, I'm always having dinner together as a family thing.
So you didn't feel like you bore that stress? You're not in a different world as you're at the dinner table?
I mean, I think maybe, and to the second part of this, my wife is my best friend and help, me get through all of these things. So talking to myself, but she's on my executive team for that analogy, and having her to sometimes just listen, sometimes kick me in the butt and go, challenge, my complaint or could be a crazy idea that maybe it's too crazy or a frustration that, I just need to get past. So she, that's a key to success there.
She helped you process through a lot of those things. Yes. That's really good. But and then from a kid's standpoint, you don't feel like it affected your interactions with them?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if anything, them seeing, Dad's an entrepreneur. There's a certain amount of, I think, I'm not going to claim credit for anything, but they're going to be who they are. But I think there's something powerful to seeing me talk at the dinner table about, I'm going to create another company, and look at this thing, and like that, hearing about the freedom and the options and that kind of personal agency in your career is something that hopefully helps them.
Absolutely, they'll absorb those things.
And it's interestingly, they're both going down careers that are in creative work, artistic work that I'm not in, but I think that's something that maybe is rubbed off. They both went to Montessori schools, so I think that again is an environment that encourages exploring your passions, and I think they maybe don't pay a lot of attention to Dad, but seeing me express my enjoyment in my work and the people I work with, I think is probably rubbed off in some good ways.
A lot of people think that you have to do a startup before you have kids. And because they say, once you're settled down, you have a wife, you have kids, you have responsibilities, then you really shouldn't take big risks like that, or maybe it's time to. And you didn't do that. Or maybe you just never stopped doing startups. It just seems like it's been good.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, some elements that this worked for me. One was just, again, a little bit of a personal strategy is like, I wanted to go get experience before I felt confident enough to make the leap. And so, like I said, coming out of business school, my friends, and the cool thing to do was move out to San Francisco and join one of the dot-coms that were gearing up, going to Procter & Gamble was the anti-cool move, you know, but I looked at the career as a long-term path and said, well, wow, I can learn a lot of things here. This is really going to help me advance. The first joining my friends at this agency was a way of jumping to something entrepreneurial, but it was not a startup. It was a business that had been around, that we refocused it, and it's an agency, so it's not like you're inventing a business model. But that jump gave me some more skills and entrepreneurial confidence, and then got an exit. So it allowed me to put some money in the bank and to have the freedom to take more risks while still, you know, covering college future needs and household spending and things like that. So I think the ideal is watching your burn rate so that you can take risks. But I think that I would, you know, advise other people later in their career to go for it, because you've got different new experiences and confidence, and you know that you've learned a lot along the way that you can apply.
That's a different arc. It sounds it's a more of a crescendo, as opposed to, I think that a lot of people view, especially as I talk to folks in their mid-20s, I think a lot of people expect a big pop, swing, like just grand slam swing at 25.
Yeah.
And either I make it or I strike out, and then I'll do do this crescendo thing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, but the problem with that is that often you're starting your crescendo at 30 instead of at 20, right?
Yeah. Something I'm a big believer in too is that if I was coming out of college now in the same way, I probably would not honestly go to a Procter & Gamble. I'd go work at a startup as one of the early employees, because you learn so much. I mean, everybody that take the journey with Ahalogy, they're learning because of the transparency, because of we've got to figure out what to do with this. Like, they're all kind of founders and learning that along the way while making a salary and having some job security. You know, they learn a lot of things by being a part of it, seeing our team make decisions, going through an exit. Like, these are all free, you know, paid education. You're being paid to learn.
Yes.
But then you can have the confidence to go, wow, I've gotten to see it, I've done it without risking everything. And I hope a lot of them go start something someday coming out of this.
That's great. Yeah, that goes into your, you said that you feel like you have a calling, and that calling is to be a CEO and entrepreneur. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the concept of a calling is something that, you know, many people talk about. I think that there's, it's that idea, and I think even going back to a career progression, I've always felt like the job you're trying to do, especially early on, is discover what is your passion. And not like, you know, like passion, I think is maybe overused, but the calling. Mm-hmm. What are you really good at, and what do you love doing? And starting off in a place, it almost doesn't matter where you start work, as long as you're learning and getting some exposure to that and testing yourself in that. And so I think every time someone makes a career jump, it should never be about money. You know, it should never be about title. It's about, am I going to do something that's closer to my calling? And whether I know it is, or I'm going to learn, expose myself to something that might be. In many cases, that might be worth taking a salary decrease, yes, or working at a more risky company. You know, like that's not talked about a lot. But for me, that calling kind of hit as I had to take over as CEO and be the guy. You know, I had not. That was the first time I was the CEO of a company. Right. You know, ironically. But it was, the weird thing was, it was literally a moment of like the light shine down again. I go like, I love this job. Like, even when we were in the lowest shit, like we were in so much trouble. Like I said, plant like this close to going to 5 employees. What do we do? Do we sell this for parts? Like, you know, everything was on the table, and I was smiling. Like because I think it goes into, I just would rather spend 100% of my time thinking about what should we do, guys, versus, hey, boss, what do you want to do? And I can't like that. Just I would, something I think about is almost the analogy or the story would be, I would so much rather live with my own dumb mistakes, than live with someone else's dumb mistakes.
Yes. Like
if I have to, okay, you decided and now I have to execute, I'm just not going to do that. And so having your own butt on the line, being responsible, barely a little bit of decision making that you have to come up with, but like that was key. Ironically, when I stepped over, it brought me back to my time being a brand manager at Procter and Gamble. Ironically, which that's where was the only time before where I felt like I was the leader. I am the brand manager on Mr. Clean. My butt's on the line, and I had managers, but they were off working on Swiffer or working on something bigger. They were just like, Bob, you're on this little Mr. Clean thing. Do what you want to do. Here's some advice. They were almost like investors, and I loved it.
You thrive with that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So that's something I have to do, and that's why I ultimately had to leave the company that acquired us and go keep that calling going.
Yeah. I'm curious. I guess as a transition point, actually, I'm kind of curious. So, what does that mean for this next phase for you? What is that next thing, and if that calling is going to continue on?
It's continuing. So,
what's the continuation? Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. So, who knows where we'll be when this airs? Sure. But our COO from the Ahalogy journey, Ryan Watson, he came in to Ahalogy after a startup that he was CEO of called Squirrel. If you may remember, it went through the Brandery a few years ago. So it was kind of an accounting SaaS. They hit a product market fit wall, and he joined us as our CFO coming out of Squirrel, and then became our COO as well. And just amazing guy.
Back and forth with him. He helped me with I think equity incentive plans.
Okay.
We emailed back and forth a little bit.
Yeah. He's kind of on the side, helps a ton of companies in town. It's such a skill that's missing, is this like startup CFO.
Oh my gosh, it's huge.
But so we were kind of into our earnout almost a couple months in. We said, okay, we're pretty confident we're going to max this thing out, because we had a product that was winning, and we had with a 7-person sales team. And all of a sudden, we were part of about a 130-person sales team that was talking to every client, had meetings weekly, and we were the hot, sexy product. They were bringing us in left and right. So it's like, these guys are really going to help us scale this thing. And but meanwhile, we also were like already not liking being employees. We wanted to go back to that magic. Sure. So we kind of there's an uncomfortable like, hey, I want to start something again. Do you want to start something again? Yeah. Well, do you want to do it together? Yeah. Okay. Well, you kind of like this thing where you do this and I do this. Yeah. And it led to starting to spend some time, probably going back a year, of just like one day a week, get together in the morning and spitball ideas. Yeah. And did the classic like Google spreadsheet, create a Slack channel and like, what about this idea? What about this idea? Yep. And went in some ways, did a little research and time and talk and in our spare time, but eventually we just kept coming back to our passion, which was around building great teams. And thinking about that's what we loved at the end of the day. In our team at Ahalogy, we were doing influencer marketing software. We could have done anything. Like it doesn't matter, any industry, anything, because we had built such that great team. And seeing, then being a part of a large company, we could see here's a team that has opportunities for improvement, which is really what big companies are. It's hard for them to figure that out.
Oh my God.
So we kind of were having
cultural shift. There's generational shift that's happening. There's a lot that's going on.
Different offices. I mean, different acquisitions coming in. But like that's a lot of companies. Like they have ups and downs and some struggles, and thinking, wow, let's learn how this company does it and how other big companies do it, and what's a business that we could create that could help other businesses build better teams. And so that again kind of led our thinking down a certain path. And we're working on something right now, which is kind of taking another just huge key to success in team building, which is tapping each other's networks. And so think of networks not as LinkedIn. Like this would be almost the anti-LinkedIn. LinkedIn had a lot of promise. Hey, join it, connect with people, help each other succeed, make intros. Everything on LinkedIn, from my experience, is now everybody joins everybody.
Yes, yeah.
It's a non-network, and they're selling our names for spam. They're trying to force us, purposely go through more clicks to get what we need so they can give us more ad impressions. And so there's got to be, the idea of your reputation network is kind of the closest we've come to defining this, where that short list of the people that you know well and you like working with. And it could be someone you'd recommend for a job, someone that, you're trying to make a connection, and they'll make that because you have that shared blood, and you want to help each other.
It's the strength of that relationship.
Yeah, and even if someone asked you to make the connection, you wouldn't just ignore them. You would go, here's why I can't, and I know this person, but here's why I'm not comfortable making that.
Or I can speak on behalf of them that this is not what they want.
This is the idea of reputation goes back to how humanity was formed in small villages.
This is why we're alive. Yes, exactly.
150 people. You got to cooperate. We are a cooperative social creature. And now we're in this giant world where we work with people and sell to people all over the planet, 7 billion folks. Remote work, working from home. Trust is more needed than ever. Some people say it's like a warm intro world now. How do we make that easier? How do we make it easier to connect those true networks, but also bring people into our networks? Yes. And so we're again trying to learn from our previous experiences where we scaled way too fast, doing some interesting experiments with some companies in town, some friends that we're experimenting with. What would that future network look like? How do we manage it? How would you build it? What would be a better way of getting some reputation type data and sharing with people information about looking at themselves and looking at their own reputation and looking at the networks they have, and hey, how can we get people to improve the diversity of the people that they work with? One of the things that you get to do when you're starting from scratch and sitting at home, in COVID, is you get to do a lot of reading, and there's some amazing research on the social networks, not Facebook, but like the humanity, like how our brains process relationships and how many relationships we can have at once, how relationships evolve, how networks evolve. One of the things that, just go on a slight tangent, is you can look at how some people tend to connect to multiple network groups, and they're called brokers, or they have a high brokerage score.
Yes.
Those people, almost the opposite of the social bubble that we hear about now with the election going on and things, that people who are Facebook has trapped people in their social bubble. So all they hear from is the small group, all they see is the news, and that leads to a lot of negative things like conspiracy theories and but think of the opposite of that is people who are connected and interacting with lots of different people. The science shows that people with high brokerage make more money, get promoted faster, have higher peer ratings. The reason? They learn to work well with lots of different types of people.
That makes sense.
By being exposed to more people and more ideas, you become a better person.
It's almost relational resilience.
Yeah.
Right? It's that I can go into a lot of diverse situations and adjust.
And isn't that what diversity is? Like, we don't need diversity. Like, it's kind of, and we have data now of people who have more diverse people and work with more diverse people, make more money. Those companies do better. The data's out there. Can we start exposing people to their own data? Can we show them, here's where your networks are strong or weak. Here's the people in your network that are more connected to diverse people. And maybe, where do you start spending your time based on how you can get exposed to different ideas and different types of people. To be selfish, not to be nice and, I guess I should, hire more diverse people. Like, no, this goes back to the point. It's capitalist, it's just smart business.
Yes. It's actually, it's a strategy for success as opposed to broccoli, right? You gotta eat your broccoli. You don't want that. Oh, that's great.
So it's probably, it's early now. Sure. We could go in lots of different directions, but we're exploring, and we've got some help from some developer friends who are donating some night and weekends with us, and
that's great.
And it's fun to just kind of not in a rush. Not we got to go raise $1 billion. We got to prove ourselves. It's like let's, this is not something that's going to be a race, a sprint. And
you're actually trying to be intellectually honest too, because you know how
Yeah.
long this is going to be. So if you can kill it now, it's much better
Yeah.
than trying to jump in.
What's funny, like as you talk to some people and they go, well, the path is littered with a bunch of companies that have tried to do something. It's like, great. We just have to figure out how to do make a lot of experiments and
Sure.
cheaply and easily, and not just put the blinders on and go. Which is again a learning that we're able to correct this time based on our past mistakes.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting because it seems like the dream of this new business. Do you have a name for the new business?
It's called Hardy.
Hardy.
Yeah. So it's kind of we came up with it from the inspired by the pirate phrase "Ahoy, me hearties," and which is like just a word for us. It's there's certain analogies to being on a ship, and I probably used it 5 times tonight of how you count on each other and you're going on this voyage, and it's a small band of comrades, but there's also the heart, and I think that's the thing that at this point in my career I love most is the people that I'm working with, and that peak experience that we had at Ahalogy, dancing on the beach of Cancun. How could we help thousands of other companies have those experiences,
Yes.
and see that heart that you can have from work.
Yes, I mean that's the dream, and that was your last lesson, which is it's possible to truly love your coworkers and cry together when the band breaks up.
Yeah,
And
cry together out of excitement and pleasure on the good things, but
Yes.
also like, there's been some teary times. You almost got me a couple times here tonight. Hopefully, not too visible, but yeah, it's pretty amazing.
But the idea of like you experienced that and that was meaningful for you. It changed your perspective, and now you're hoping to actually share that with other people.
Yeah, I mean, and the magic of loving what you do, loving who you work with every day. We work so many hours, and on the other end, like seeing the sadness or the misery of so many other companies that can't feel that, they don't see it. It's not, it's the black and white versus color. If you could just have them experience that, we could make, it could do a 100x better world. I mean, honestly, if that is the mindset. And so how can we teach? How can we share? How can we create some systems that start, spreading that?
Yes,
somehow?
you're literally changing the majority of people's waking life.
That's the crazy goal. And why not? Why not try? There's an
Absolutely.
infinite number of things we could do. This could fall flat and we'll pick ourselves up and try something else again. Why not?
That's great. Bob, this has been a pleasure. This
Thanks.
is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so
Fun
much
for me.
We'll do
Cathartic.
Yes, absolutely. We'll do a fist bump in this.
All right.
So, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Blake.
That's great. Cool. Hey, I hope you liked that video. If so, maybe watch another right here. Why not? Also, make sure to hit subscribe down below. Thanks for watching.